take turns.
The microphone has two fathers.
All right. Welcome to the evening session of Based Con. We will be talking with our esteemed guests about Amazon ads. And I've already forgotten their names, so I'll let them introduce themselves.
My name is Rob, also known as Robert Cruzy, and I think this is the first panel that I'm actually doing because I've managed to avoid the rest of them. I usually kind of enjoy doing them, but I've had a little. I'm also running this event, so it's been a little crazy.
Drinking man with a con problem.
And yes, so I am. We got past the kind of a hump today, so now I don't care anymore. I'm done. I'm just done. So anyway, I write books. The main thing I do when I'm not doing this stuff, I published my first novel, Mercury Falls, something like 12 years ago. Self-published it. It got picked up by Amazon. When they were first getting into publishing, and I got kind of picked up with the whole ebook bubble, and did a few more books with them, and then I went back to self-publishing. I did sort of sci-fi, Douglas Adams, Harry Harrison-ish kind of wacky sci-fi humor and fantasy, just because it was fun to write. And then I've kind of moved more recently into more serious, as serious as time-traveling space Vikings can be. It's more hard-ish sci-fi with some historical stuff and philosophical things mixed in, but not really quite as much humor. That is what I do, which is why I don't sell as many books as I probably could, because I keep switching genres. So.
My name is Russell Newquist. I wrote I've got a novel called War Demons. It's about a young man who his fiancée died in the 9/11 attacks, so he went and joined the army, convinced he was going to take out bin Laden himself. Came home 5 years later, disillusioned from all of that, and every young soldier brings their war demons home with them. In his case, they're literal demons, which kicks off the story. I had a few copies here, but they've all been claimed. If you want a free copy, hit me up afterwards. I can hook you up with an ebook.
Travis Corcoran, I've introduced myself once or twice already, but I'm author of the Aristillus series, which is Powers of the Earth and Causes of Separation, a few short stories, and also a 2-volume homesteading series called Escape the City, Volume 1 and Volume 2. And my background, other than that, is I'm a software engineer, and for 15 years I was an entrepreneur and ran a couple of companies, and so I've done a lot of online advertising and A/B testing, and I hate advertising, but I've forced myself to learn some about it.
Cool. And I guess the moderator is supposed to introduce himself, although I already have today. I'm Ryan Williamson, the author of The Widow's Son. There's some copies up there. I get this really nice fancy swivel chair because I'm the moderator.
That's how you know he's in charge.
Yes,
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, and we need to thank Lowell Jacobson, who suggested that we drink on this panel.
Yes.
And I think the rule of thumb is that this is a very dry panel, so we're aiming to keep all the panels at a constant level of wetness, and this one requires whiskey. So.
Yes. Amen. So the first question I would ask, and I'd put it out to anyone on the panel, and then we can go down the panel from there, is has Amazon advertising actually worked for you?
I have, in fact, had some successes with Amazon advertising. So the overview is advertising.amazon.com, and there's a couple of different kinds of ads. You can target it, in general, towards your brand or towards a specific book. My experiments to date have been with a specific book. You can let Amazon do the ad copy for you, or just sort of drop it in suggested places, or you can write your own ad copy. I've done a few experiments that haven't worked, and everything works in that you throw money at it and you'll get some customers. But obviously, if you spend $10 and you make $1 of profit, this is a very bad approach to things. Amazon will track the sales for you, and it will refer to them by I think some ACOGS, Amazon Cost of Goods Sold, or Advertising Cost of Goods Sold. And so what you'd prefer is a 0 or 0.1 cost of goods sold. If you can sell something and it costs you 1 cent and you're going to make $10 of royalties, you'd love that. The best I've achieved so far is on the order of 12 to 13% cost of goods sold. Now, the important thing to realize is that if you are selling a book at Amazon for $10, especially a paperback or a hardcover, all of that revenue doesn't land in your pocket. If you sell an ebook, 70% of that revenue will land in your pocket. So a $10, to make the math easy, ebook will net you $3. So if you sell an ebook,
$7.
right? So thank you. I have an excuse. So if you had a ACOGS of 80%, you'd think, oh, less than 100%, I'm getting to keep something. No, you're not. You've got to do the math and realize Amazon is keeping 30%. You're keeping less, and so you're costing yourself every time you sell. For trade paperbacks and for hardcovers, I think the total that you keep is on the order, depending on what price you pick, on the order of 25%. So in cost of goods sold, ACOGS of 24% means that you're earning a few pennies every time you sell a book. That's actually worth doing if it's a marginal incremental sale. And the best, like I said, that I've achieved is 13%. So that means that I have had ads as successful as, only costing me half of my revenue. And so that's decent. I need to spend more time playing with it, writing ad copy. And one big thing I'll save this for later. So the answer to your question was a very long-winded yes.
Thank you.
I've had mixed success with it. And we can get into this as we get into the panel, but the way ads on Amazon work, something that works this month may not work at all next month. It works very well this month, could give you nothing next month. And the book you're doing, the keywords you're targeting, the ad copy, all of those can have a really huge impact on how your ad does. So I've had mixed success. I've had some cases of very good success and some cases of very not. Travis's 12% cost of goods sold is extremely good on Amazon. I can tell you from working with about 50 books in the past. I run a small publishing house as well, so I have a little bit more data than most. But yeah, I've had some that have worked really, really well for short periods and some not so much.
So I too have, I would say I've had mixed success. In the sense that I think I probably over all the history of the ads that I've done on Amazon, I've made about as much money as I've spent. So I've increased my total number of sales and possibly eventually, over time increased my number of readers. But whether it's been worth the amount of time that I put into it, I don't know. This is one of the things, one of the problems with being self-publisher, and we can maybe go into this more, is that you're wearing all these different hats, and you don't have time to become like the Amazon ad expert. And this is one reason why, people go with Russell, because he or someone who works for him probably it's a better use of their time, because they've got 50 books or whatever that they're trying to sell, and so they can really dig into the Amazon data, which I know that he has. Whereas me, it's like, okay, I've got 2 weeks in between, but between finishing this book and starting the next one, I'm going to dig into Amazon ads, and that's how much time I have to figure it out. And if I don't figure it out in that time, it's like I start spending some money, and then well, that was a waste of time and money, and now I'm on to the next thing.
One thing,
and then 3 months go by, and I get another chance, and everything has changed, and I have to relearn it, and so it's difficult. Because it changes so fast, and you have to keep switching hats.
One thing that Rob said that I'd like to follow up on is that even on his ads, which break even, it costs him $3 to sell a book that he makes a $3 profit. That can in fact be a win, because he might have achieved a new fan, and that fan will go off and buy all 10 or 15 of Rob's books, and if he makes a $3 or $5 profit on each of those. And Amazon tracking has no way of knowing when someone comes back in 3 months and types in more good books by Rob Crozy. what they're looking for. And so this ties into a thing that's a little off topic for this panel, but a conventional piece of wisdom, which I believe is correct, just based on my own experience. When I was a teen, I discovered Heinlein, I discovered Niven, and I'd just go to the bookstore and I'd look for those names, and I would buy anything by those authors. So the wisdom for self-published authors is write a lot of stuff, because your profits go up sort of as the square of your number of books, because the number of books that you have on the one hand is the number of potential on-ramps to new fans finding you, and then once each of those new fans finds you, it's also the number of depth of books that they can buy. And I'm terrible at this. I've written, very few books, but Rob is doing a much better job.
Well, I've written a ton of books, but the problem is they're all over the place. So then a lot of my fan base drops off from one book to the next. So then it's if I could stick to a genre, I get bored, and so I want to try writing a mind-bending mystery. I want to try writing humorous fantasy or whatever, and so or hard science fiction. And so those are all, to me it's like those are all kind of fun things to read, but it's like to most readers it's like they're looking for military sci-fi, or they're looking for historical sci-fi or humorous fantasy or whatever. It's like they keep read all those books, and it's very difficult. So from a business, I mean, I wouldn't do it any other way, because it's fun, and I learn more, I grow more as an author, changing things up. But from a business standpoint, it's stupid.
So I want to just take a second to riff on something both of these guys said in different ways. If you're going to get into Amazon ads, the first thing that I will tell you is that Amazon's tracking is terrible. It is absolutely terrible. I'm going to disagree with something Travis said here. I think Amazon does have the data to know when somebody has bought your book through an ad and continues to buy the rest of your series, but they don't share it with us. There's a lot of data that I know Amazon has that I really wish they would share with us, but they don't. A couple of key things about their tracking that you should know if you're going to use it, and it took me way too much time and money to figure this out. You can fool yourself if you track your stats daily on Amazon ads. You can fool yourself into thinking that those are accurate daily, and they're not. Those stats are not accurate until 14 days after the fact, and you may have data show up immediately. If you go buy a book right now based off of one of my ads, it may show up in my tracking right now. And it may not show up for 14 days.
But I believe the cost will show up immediately.
The sales the cost of the ad will show up immediately, but the actual sale may not show up for 14 days. Which means in order to do anything with it, you have to have patience, and you also have to have some money you're ready to play with that you can afford to not get back immediately, because it's just going to take you a while to get good data to figure out if the ads are working for you. There's no way around it because their tracking is so bad. And I will also encourage you, which we have a lot of software people in the audience for whom it's easier, I know because I am one, track your stats yourself. Because your stats and your tracking will be better than Amazon's, I promise you. I actually have invested time, because I have so many books, into some software to automate the tracking for me. No, I won't sell it, sorry. Mostly because it's not ready for commercial use. Yeah. It's functional enough for me to use it because I wrote it, and I'm not interested in putting more time into it. But even with that, it's hard to track what's going on with their ads. The other comment I'll make about Travis was mentioning readers who buy more books after they've read yours. I absolutely believe that's true, and it is very hard to tell how many, but the best proxy you have for that is data. It's called read-through rate. How many people who buy your book buy book one? You sold 20 copies of book one this month. How many copies of book two did you sell? How many copies of book three and book four? And you can collect the average for that over time. Over the course of a year or two, you can assume that those rates, if you track them over time and get a good feel for it, you can assume that you're going to get something close to that in return from your ad. It's not a perfect metric, but it's about the best you've got. And there was one other thing I was going to say, and it slipped my mind. So I will pass it up, and hopefully it'll come back to me.
I've got one thing to riff off of that. and we were just hearing about how you have to invest some money. And I want to make more clear on this that you one of the things you're doing with advertising is purchasing readers. Or purchasers, but you are also purchasing information, and so you can sometimes, feel a bit disappointed that you threw $30 or $40 on sales, and you didn't make it back. But you did learn something. It's there's no such thing as a failed experiment. Some experiments show that this hypothesis is correct. Some show that it's incorrect. But either way, you've learned something. And it's too bad that J.A. Sutherland, who was originally scheduled for the panel but had to drop out at the last minute, isn't here, because he both has a lot of success with Amazon, and he also plays poker recreationally. And poker is a game where you are buying information as you go. And so I'm not surprised that he's good at both of these two things. And we'll talk more about buying information and A/B tests maybe later in the discussion.
Okay, awesome. So I think that the best way that I can think of to lead this is, so I'm new to Amazon advertising. I've just started playing with it. I realize that it's an investment and that you have to kind of pay to learn. So my strategy and my question to you after I get through this is, am I batshit crazy or am I actually doing the right thing? My strategy is that I started with, so I found a tool that generated about 350 keywords based on my book. These keywords were subject matter, they were author names, they were book titles. I went through the list, I called the keywords that were obviously way off base, but I kept most of them. And so I started a campaign with about 320 keywords. I wrote some ad copy, and I sent it off into the wild. And then what I did, and I'm thinking I screwed up a bit after your 14-day thing, but then what I did is that every day or two, I would go through the reports and I would look at the keyword performance. And if the keyword was doing nothing, I would just leave it. If the keyword was getting a lot of impressions and a lot of clicks but no sales, I would turn it off. And if the keyword was getting a lot of impressions, a lot of clicks, and an appreciable amount of sales, I'd keep it going. At this point, after about 5 weeks of experimenting, I think my best keyword, which ironically is another author's name who has no relation to my genre whatsoever, but I don't know how these things work, is getting me AGO, whatever that thing is, of about 100%. So am I on the right track, or am I just wasting money?
So that's basically the same approach that I use.
Same here.
My one advice would be, well, more than one. I got a couple of things you can do to make it a little smarter. One is you just have to give it more time than daily. My initial approach was exactly the same, and I got very frustrated. I gave up Amazon ads for a while. I went back to them, gave them up. And when I realized that it could be 14 days, really, and I forget where I read that, but I have verified it with data too, so I can confirm that. That's something else that I will comment on that is very worth knowing. Very worth knowing is that 99% of everything you will read about the Amazon algorithms, both ads and Amazon itself, is utter and complete bullshit. Okay? Almost everything I have ever read about how Amazon's algorithms works, there's a few things, but almost all of it, I have data to confirm that it is just not true. Most people don't know what they're talking about at all, and you just you've got to just filter a lot of that out. The other thing, and this feeds into the next thing I was going to say is advice. You've got to give it more time. But the other issue is a lot of the mystique that comes from Amazon ads, that people have their theories of, does this work or does that work, and they go into this other. Most of it is actually a function of just one thing, which is the keywords themselves. So picking other authors that are relevant is a good starting point, and other books that are relevant. It's a great place to start. It might not be your best results, but it's the low-hanging fruit that's easy to go after. So in my own case, with my own book, Jim Butcher, for instance, makes a great target starting spot. So when Jim Butcher puts out a new book, the search numbers of people who are searching for Jim Butcher and all of his books goes way up. When Jim Butcher hasn't put out a new book for 3 or 4 years, like what happened for a while, the searches for all of his books go down. Okay? And that's because people aren't buying him. He hasn't put out a new book. They're not hyped up. When they're hyped up about his books, they're searching for that term. That's true for everything on Amazon. Okay? And so people will say, this search term was working great for me last year, and it's not working at all this year. Well, why? The author hasn't put out a book, and it won't help you. Sometimes you can track what that is. With Jim Butcher, it was very obvious. I had keywords out there for Jim Butcher that hadn't done anything, and then he put out a new book, and bam, I have to actually go watch my spending, because all of a sudden they're going off the charts on how much they're spending.
So not.
But sometimes you can't track that because you don't know why your keyword is working, right? You have a keyword that works and you don't know why, and sometimes you don't know that this author hasn't released a new book. But you will see patterns in that. You will think you see patterns in this that are not really there, that really just boil down to there's not a new book out on this, or some current event happens, so people are searching for this term, or whatever. And God only knows why. So keep that in mind with all of your ads. If you have an ad that's performing well, but just isn't getting seen a lot, keep it going, because something may happen that causes people to search for that.
So I just wanted to follow up with something on that. Do you keep an eye out for events, like if Jim Butcher comes out with a new book or something else happens that you're like, oh, people are going to be searching for this, or like different times of year that people are, Christmas or whatever? Are there events that you look at and go, oh, I'm going to have to tweak things?
I try to, but you also have to be aware that everybody else who thinks their book is like Jim Butcher is also doing the same thing.
That's the problem.
So the cost of that keyword is going to go up when he puts out a new book. That's the game, whether we like it or not. It's the way the game is. The books that sell more, you're going to pay more for those keywords, because so is everybody else. Right?
So, yes, there's been a lot of talk about keywords, and that is half the battle. The other half of the battle is advertising copy. And
that was going to be my next question.
Okay, great.
So,
I'll
perfect
jump in and
segue.
save you a
Perfect
sentence.
segue.
So Amazon has two types of ads. One is merely sort of recommended with, where there's no ad copy associated with it. There's just a picture of the book. The other type is where you do get to specify your ad copy. And ad copy is, an art and a science. And, so if I'm, writing a book, Aristillus Book 1, The Powers of the Earth, I can say Libertarian Rebels on the Moon. I can put the words, big guns, big spaceships, big battles. There's a host of things that I could say. And the ratio between the best ads and the worst ads, in general, I'm not saying just at Amazon, but across the entire industry, is on the order of 100 to 1 or 1,000 to 1. So ad copy matters a lot. There's a book that I recommend. I read it and I used it a lot when I was running a couple of companies back from around 2000 to 2014. Which is Tested Advertising Methods. And now, so a lot of people are thinking, now that we have, software and the LAMP stack and cheap databases and everything, we can actually do something they've never done before, and that's to A/B test our ads. No, this technology is 70 or 80 or 90 years old. The advertising guys back in the day, specifically direct mail advertising, were masters at this. They would A/B test the small classified ads they put in back of magazines. They would A/B test the letters that they sent out to people. They would A/B test word choice, action verbs, and there's hundreds of secrets out there. One of them, and I last read it, 5 or 6 years ago, but, headlines that end with question marks perform better. Action words perform better. So you can certainly narrow the range of experimentation that you need to do by reading this book and learning some of the lessons that were learned by 1945. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. But that having been said, you do need to do testing on your own particular book. So, I mentioned a few things. I could have Libertarian Rebels on the Moon. I could say, In the Spirit of Robert Heinlein, etc. The smart move is to write, 10 or 20 or 100 ads and run them all. Another point that I think came from this book is when you are writing taglines, you're going to sit down and let's say that you've got a book about, Catholic space marines fighting interstellar demons. You're going to sit for, by default, 20 seconds, and your first thing is going to be Catholic space marines fighting interstellar demons, and the second one is going to be join the fight, enlist now, and if you just force yourself to concentrate for 15 or 20 or 45 minutes and write 100 headlines and stare at them, you will realize that 20 of them are trash. 20 of them are okay. And then you will find, and you'll show it to a few friends, everyone will agree, yeah, there's 4 or 5 or 6 that are really much better than the rest. This is hard to do. I hate doing this. I can't focus on it, but I forced myself to do it a few times, and it works. And I need to do this in the context of book advertising. I need to sit down and I need to come up with 100 headlines for the Aristillus series, pick 5 and do A/B tests, and I need to do 100 headlines for the Escape the City homesteading book and pick 5 and A/B test them.
And would you recommend that to make it a proper A/B test that you use the exact same keywords for each ad that you post?
I would change one variable at a time.
Exact
Yeah.
300 same
Yep.
keywords for each of the 5
and then
ads.
having narrowed it down from the 5 to the 2 best performing, then I would do a whole second set of A/B testing on the keywords, because these are 2 distinct domains of research.
Yeah, you don't want to muddy the waters by
I don't disagree with anything Travis just said, but I will throw out there the other thing. 2 things related to it. One is, if you are going to do that much A/B testing, there's no way around it. You've got to have the budget to do that much A/B testing. It sucks. It sucks because you're sitting there throwing money down a black hole, and you are crying every minute it goes down the stream. But it's the only way to do it. The second thing is, do not be afraid to have different headlines, different ad copy for different keywords. You might have keywords, that are targeting one author that might work extremely well targeting that author. But if you target a different author, then it just does nothing. So you can A/B test that, and it's a great way to get data on that. And sometimes you can just use your own brain and A/B test it. If you are the type of author who is conservative enough to show up at a place like BasedCon, and you are advertising books that your book is actually similar to a book written by a progressive author, you might not want to put all the progressive keywords in there in the progressive headline or the conservative headline to advertise to what might be that audience. Just as an obvious example, but you can trade up your ad copy based on the keywords, and you will absolutely get different results on different keywords with the same ad with different ad copy on them. So definitely keep that in mind.
On the topic of politics, my novels are, in a sense, ideological, but they're not political in the sense that they don't engage with the political fight of today, of this particular election. But that having been said, I did an experiment, which was 2 or 3 years ago. I forget the exact date. And I played around with Trump-related slogans like "Make Science Fiction Great Again," "Make America Great Again." And for an interval in time, I did have a bump where those paid off. And I think it was when, what is his name? John Delarose? Is that the guy I'm thinking of?
John Delarose.
Delarose, was sort of hammering that sort of culture war aspect. So I guess there's a couple of points here. One is exactly as you were saying, a thing might work at one point in time and not work 6 months later. A second thing is events happen in the world that will affect your marketing. And so if you have the time and attention to deal with that, for example, with Escape the City, I'm just spinning this up in my head right now, but a great idea might be to track natural disasters and have ads. Texas power outage generator book is probably a great way to sell a homesteading book for a week or two. And then California wildfire, pond firefighting, etc.
But the downside of that is
Like
that you
20
can
minutes,
spend a lot of time trying to chase the current zeitgeist with your ads.
Yeah.
And still just be behind the time. I mean, even if you spend full time, your whole time doing it, you can still end up behind the times because sometimes, especially in our modern world, it can change so fast. So I would recommend doing that for things that might be obvious, or especially things where you think you have an insight into something before other people do. but I would not recommend spending too much of your time trying to do that because it will suck up all your time and keep you from writing more books.
Yeah.
Which is the best way to sell
Right.
the best way to sell your book is to write more books.
Yeah, that's what I was going to get into, which is that I think, I mean, maybe I'll just ask you guys what you think about it, but my feeling would be if you have one book out, I wouldn't do this at all. I mean, I wouldn't come to this panel because
Right.
there's no point trying to sell one book. I mean, you might, if you spend a lot of time and money on it, there's a chance you'll make money or at least sell some books. But it's really slim, and your odds of making a profit on these ads. If you have 2, 3, 4, 5 books out, and you can get people hooked on a series, it's much better use of your time and your money.
It's worse than Rob is saying, and it might be worse than he knows, and I'll tell you why. Because I've been tracking data for several years now, and Amazon ads are more expensive than they were 3, 4, 5 years ago. And here's what's happening. I've talked with several people in the industry, and I know this. An awful lot of the best performing keywords in any genre are being bought up by authors who have series that have 10, 15, 20 books in them. And if you have a series that has 10, 15, 20 books in it, you can afford to lose money on your first book. Sometimes a lot of money, right? So if you have one book and you're selling it for $4.99, 70% royalties, you're going to make $3.15 or something off of it from Amazon. That's the most you can afford to spend on ads to even break even. But if you've got 20 books and say your read-through rate is 30%, which is kind of low, but say your read-through rate is 20-30%, you can afford to spend $10, $12 to sell that one book and break even. And if you only have one book, you have absolutely no hope of competing against that.
This is why I'm moderating and not on the panel, because I only have one book and I'm advertising.
This is why I'm mostly listening too. So.
It's extremely difficult to make your money back on that. Can it be done? Yes. Yes, I have done it, not often, but I have done it, and I know other people have done a lot better at it than me, but it's very hard.
So you were talking about Amazon raising prices or prices climbing over time. Is anyone familiar with Bern Hobart? He writes a finance newsletter, Substack.com. So he's like, the number 10 ranked author at Substack. He's a good guy, also a friend of mine. And he approaches everything from the sort of economics or finance point of view. And he talks about, Amazon has this very weird business where Amazon is selling you ads for things that Amazon itself sells. So let's say that Russ and I have books that are competing. They speak to the exact same audience, and they're replacement goods for each other. So someone's going to buy one of them. So let's say I've got a $5 profit. He's got a $5 profit. I, of course, am willing to spend 1 cent to buy that purchaser. Russ, of course, is willing to spend 2 cents to buy back. And so we're going to get in a bidding war. And, the end of that is we end up spending, one of us wins at $4.99. So effectively, we both lose. Amazon has just engaged in a clever hack where it has motivated us and encouraged us to shift the ratio that authors versus Amazon get on every book. We've shifted it from 30% Amazon and 70% author to 99% Amazon and 1% author. Now, kudos to them. That's awesome. That's very clever. But you have to pay attention to this. And, to quote from War Games, sometimes on some games, the only winning move is not to play.
It can be. And you have to be very aware of that, which, again, if you have very limited number of books, that's the way you want to go. I also remembered what I was going to say earlier, which does tie into all of this as well. There's an old saying in the marketing world, 75% of your advertising doesn't work. You just wish you knew which 75% it was. The problem is these online companies with all their targeting advertising and all their tracking, they want you to believe that with all of their tracking, you will know which 75% it is. They are lying, okay? You still don't know which one it is because here's the other thing about Amazon tracking, okay? Amazon will track it if somebody clicks on my book and then goes and buys that book within 14 days, it will count as a sale on their site. What if that person clicks on my book on my book ad through a private browser, through an ad blocking browser, through anything with cookies turned off,
or at work,
or at
remembers
work,
the title, comes home, types it in
at
on their
work,
browser.
logs in on their spouse's account. Any of these things will cause you to lose a recorded sale
Now,
from their tracking.
You still make the profit on the
You
sales.
still make the profit, but you don't know. The only way you can know, and even then, this is imperfect, is to track your sales and track your ads yourself. And it's the best you can do, but again, you still don't know which keyword caused that,
Yep.
which ad copy caused that, and the like. So that adage is still true in the modern world, and don't let these big mega corporations lie to you and fool you into thinking that you will know because they provide you all this tracking. You won't. You won't know for sure which part works. And are you making money off of your ad campaign, or are you not making money off of your ad campaign? It's really the best you've got.
Now, so far, the topic is, how to succeed at Amazon ads, and you've got 3 downers here saying it's doomed, it's doomed.
I'm not saying it's doomed.
I know.
I'm just saying it's hard.
I'm overstating. I'm overstating for the fun. But marketing isn't merely about buying ads. Marketing and advertising involves a lot of other tracks. You can release press releases. I mean, free media works just as well as paid media. Sometimes it works better, and obviously it's a lot cheaper. So I have made, a couple of thousands of dollars of sales off of paying Amazon for ads. I've made maybe $1,000 by paying Facebook for ads. And I was asked to come on the Tim Pool podcast about 6 weeks or so ago, and I made something on the order of $40,000, not in sales, but in profits from that podcast appearance. So that worked out well. I still have to sue Amazon to get them to shake loose $10,000 of that, so that's a different story. But if you dig into marketing and advertising books, I mentioned One Tested Advertising Methods, but there are lots of other good books out there. They will talk to you about how to create press releases, how to create controversy. John Delarose is a master at this. He is, and I mean this, I like him, he's a good guy. He is a shit stirrer. So he gets out there, he picks fights, and, as long as they're spelling his name right and there's a link to his Twitter account, he's winning. So think broadly about what advertising means. Controversy is good. You're all familiar with the phrase on Twitter, it's terrible to make you click. That is what terrible, terrible journalists do. And you can do it too. So, you can have a blog. I haven't done all of these things, but especially in independent contract work, like for software, one thing that's done is to have a blog and just, write once a day or once a week on some technical issue so that you tend to rise in organic search results. There's lots of approaches out there, and Amazon ads is just one of them.
It is just one. Controversy can work very well. I know John Delarose pretty well, actually. I've met him in person a few times. He's very different in person than he is on Twitter, and yet not at the same time. The catch to controversy marketing, I will warn everybody about this ahead of time, is you will make a name for yourself, and it may not be the name that you want. If you have a job that is dependent on certain things, for instance, I work for the government indirectly, I work for a contractor, I have to be careful what I say online. That is still my day job and the primary source of my income, and if I went down John Delarose's controversy marketing, I would probably be unemployed by now. And that's despite the fact that I'm good friends with the co-founders of my company who would go to bat for me. If you can get away with that, it's a wonderful marketing approach, but be cautious because even John Delarose has had boxes of dildos sent to his house, exploding dildos for his children to interact with. So it is just something to be aware of.
And on the other side of that, not to talk badly about the guy because he's not here, but I had several people saying, who's really good, who you should invite to this thing and be involved in BaseCon is John Delarose. And I was like, yeah, I know John. But I don't want it to be John Delarose JDA Con because that's what it would turn into. And then he would absolutely, we might have two or three times as many people here. We would probably have Antifa here as well. People protesting out front. We would have picketers. I would have it would be insane. And it would I wouldn't know who the people were, and so you can make yourself kind of toxic in kind of a bad way too.
The other thing you can run into with controversy marketing to be careful of is that it can limit your audience. You will do very well with that audience, but you will never sell a thing to the people on the other side of that controversy. And that might be okay. I know Travis has made several references to Catholic space knights fighting demons. That's John Del Rosa's audience, and so it's okay for him if he pisses off the other side.
I think that particular book was Adam Smith, a.k.a. Prometheus.
Yes.
But yeah, that
But
crowd,
yes,
he's a disciple.
same crowd, same folks, following the same kind of approach. Again, it can work. You just have to be very cautious about it. And it can work in your ad copy if that's your book.
And I agree with you. I was the one who introduced, hey, controversy can be good, but there's a law of diminishing returns.
There is.
And so I actually am a fan of controversy. I think it's good to use. I would not park myself in the full-on John Del Rose camp. That's not what I want for my brand. And brand is an interesting thing, not just for marketing, not just for Amazon, but in your contracting or employment life, but also in your personal life. I mean, there might be some people, I know that we, are 2 steps removed from Milo, and Milo, I think he is a great entertainer, and, he is a master troll, perhaps only second to Trump. But he's not the brand that I want for myself. And more power to him for doing what he does. So in all sorts of advertising, you have to decide who you are, what name you want for yourself, and choose tactics that are appropriate.
And Milo is one of the biggest examples of what I was saying earlier of once you adopt that as your brand,
then you're stuck.
Everywhere you go, it's what people know you as, and how much trouble has he brought upon himself. Are you ready to handle it? Milo largely has been able to handle it. John Del Rose has largely been able to handle what he's gotten. Are you ready to handle that if you're going to go down that road? The answer may be yes. And if it is, more power to you, because it's not for me.
Yeah.
I'm not in a position where I'm able to do that. But you really need to think about that before you go down that road, not afterwards. I will reiterate, though, that if you're going down that road, use it in your ad copy on paid ads, too. It will work. I have published a couple of John Del Rosa's books, and one of the Catholic Space Knight Demon books, we specifically ran ads targeted at Milo fans, and they performed pretty well, because that's John's brand. I have other authors I would absolutely never even dream of going down that road with, because it's not their brand. So which goes to one of the other things that I was thinking about earlier. Your ad copy needs to match the blurb on your book, which needs to match the book. If the ad copy doesn't match the blurb, people will click on your ad and charge you money and not buy it. If the blurb does not match your book, they will buy it, they will hate it, they will not buy your other books, and they will leave you bad reviews, which will cost you further sales. So make sure that your ad copy matches your blurb, which should also be A/B tested and should end with a question mark. All of my authors hate it when we end them with question marks, and I have data to confirm their sales go up when we do it. End it with a question, and make sure that the blurb matches your book.
So to boil that down or distill it down, it is okay to sell steak. It is okay to sell hamburger. It is okay to sell chicken fillets. But know what you're selling and be consistent about that. And that goes certainly for keywords. It goes for ad copy. It goes for the title of your book. It goes for the plot of your book. And here's an overlooked thing. It goes for the cover of your book. And I'm going off topic a little bit. One thing that I see so many self-published people do is buy a $15 piece of commissioned art off of Tumblr or something. And it is so easy to spend just a little bit more money and get something pretty decent. Now, obviously for a $100 budget, you're not going to get a sort of Neil Stephenson big publishing firm, or John C. Wright got some great art on several of his Count to a Trillion series books. By I can't remember the artist's name, but original oil paints, and when he sells these canvases later, he sells them for $30,000 a piece. But there's declining marginal returns. For $100 or $150, you can get a great cover and invest in that.
I've bought decent pre-made covers for $90 in the past. I've paid as much as $600 or $700 for hand illustrated covers. That range will get you most of what you need, and for most books in most genres, you can get away on the lower end of it. And I do want to add to what Travis said, because it's highly relevant to the Amazon ads. If your cover is not good, do not waste your money. If your cover is not good, you are throwing money down the pit. No ads you ever do will sell your book.
There's a classic century-old phrase in advertising: the worst thing for a bad product is good advertising. If you are selling a crap band of soup, you are in a better world where only 10 people ever buy that soup and see the ad. If 10,000 people see your ad and try the soup, you have poisoned 10,000 minds against you.
And I'll just say, as because I'm selfish and greedy, my background is in graphic design, and my passion is for helping authors get good covers that don't suck. And I don't really care about the money. So if you need a cover, hit me up. Let's talk. Because I really don't care about the money. I just don't want you to put a book out there with a cover that absolutely sucks.
And authors are notoriously bad at determining whether their own. I mean, from what I can tell, there are a lot of authors, because you see people who are like, "Did you see this amazing cover you got that somebody did?" And it's just horrible. Like it's like a fifth grader did it, and you always want to tell them, but it's like, have somebody else look at this. Have somebody who has some graphic design or just good aesthetic sense look at it and give you an honest opinion, because you may think it looks awesome, but you're married to that book and you have no idea.
You have no idea.
It's what's in your head, but it's not what other people are seeing.
I had an experience this year. I won't name any names, with an author that we republished, and I had an interaction when they came over, and I was like, "Oh, this is great! I'm glad we can work on this. We're going to make a budget, get a new cover in here." And because the old cover's really not very good, and he was very offended, and I felt really bad after saying it, because he was really offended. He thought his previous cover was great.
Do you need more?
Sure. I mean, if you're offering.
I thought you were trying to signal him.
I was.
It wasn't with me. It was with him.
But the truth is that his previous cover was really bad, and he liked it. And here's the harsh truth that I'm going to tell you right now. If your book is not selling, your cover's probably bad. And that's hard truth that a lot of people really don't want to hear. And it was hard for me to hear it. When I launched my first book, I actually paid for some coaching from Nick Cole and Jason Ansbach, who were on here earlier, and that was what they told me. And my wife over there will tell you that my initial reaction was bad, because I really liked the cover, and I'd paid a friend of mine, somebody I like, to do the artwork, and it was a bad cover. I know now, years later, it was a bad cover.
Just to go back to that, their covers are amazing. They have amazing art on their covers.
Yeah.
Their covers are not $100 covers.
Right.
I've done the research, and for the art that they have on their covers, you're looking at $1,500 to $2,000.
I know
to do art like that.
Jason and Nick told me that their cover for Legionnaire, the first book in Galaxy's Edge, was a $1,200 cover. But you don't have to pay that to get decent sales, and you might pay that and not get good sales as well.
Well, and I would say to that, your cover design has to match your audience.
Big time.
I made the mistake with The Widow's Son of really getting tied to a specific idea that I really fell in love with. And I commissioned an artist to do kind of a pulpy style collage of all the characters, and it's a beautiful cover, and I absolutely fell in love with it. I didn't predict the target audience, and when I released the book, it just wasn't doing very well. And the more I thought about it, the more I looked at it, the more people I talked with about it, they looked at the cover and they were like, you know what, this looks like it's a graphic novel, or like it's a novel for teens. It doesn't look like a novel for people who want to read Western horror. And so I redesigned the cover, went in a completely different direction. The moment I slapped the new cover on it, my sales doubled.
Your cover is it's a promise to your readers. Your cover is a promise of this is the kind of book you're going to get. And readers, no matter what they tell you, readers do not read everything. They read what they like, and that's it. And even somebody who is an eclectic reader who reads this and this and this, they still have, I read this and this and this, but not this and this and this. And they want, the cover to them is going to say it's this kind of book. And it is just as important that your cover turns off the wrong kind of people as it is that it turns on the right kind of people. You want your book to be a pretty accurate you want your cover to be a pretty accurate portrayal of what your book actually is, because then the people who buy it will like it and leave you good reviews, which, other than writing a new book, good reviews is probably the best thing you can do. Lots of good reviews is probably the best thing you can do to sell your book. Better than ads, better than anything else. So you want the people who read it to like it, and the second best way to do that, the first best way is to write a good book. The second best way to do that is to make sure that you're targeting your ads to the correct people. And that's one of the other things that Amazon ads can do for you, which is why you have to track your data yourself, because the secondary benefits from it can be bigger than the primary benefits. If you're targeting ads to the right kind of people, that will help the Amazon algorithm know who to sell your books to on its own. And that's one of the reasons you have to track your sales, because if you sell 1,000 new books from ads and Amazon figures out, I've got this other group of 1,000 people who will buy your book, and it sells it to them, those ads are those sales are a byproduct of your ad, but you have absolutely no way of tracking that other than tracking your sales yourselves, which is imperfect. But the only way you're going to get that follow-on sale is if your ad copy and your blurb and your cover all match the book, and they all match the target audience. And if you get that, then Amazon's algorithms will help pick you up. Not as well as they used to, in my experience, but they will help pick you up and sell you to other people. And so you have to keep all of that matched, and you have to keep it fairly finely tuned. You can actually hurt yourself with Amazon. If that's your primary market, you can actually hurt yourself by selling to the wrong people.
I've got two follow-on thoughts there. One is the topic, which I entirely agree with, of find your market and sell to them. Let's say that you've got, 100 reviews and you've got on average 2.5 stars. If you can do that over, how can you get up to 5 stars? The obvious answer is, all of those people who give me 1 star, if only somehow I could convince them to give me 5 stars instead. The other answer is never have the people who gave you 1 star find your book, and then you'll have nothing but 4 and 5 star reviews. The second topic is we heard a lot about make sure your cover matches your book. Now, there's a couple of ways that could be read. One is that the cover matches the contents of the book, as far as facts, that there's a spaceship on the cover, there's spaceships inside. But I talked earlier in the day about genre conventions and micro-genre conventions. So if I say to you the word steampunk, I think you know what a steampunk cover looks like. There's a young woman or a young guy in a long trench coat, top hat, goggles. There's an airship in the background. You could have a steamship novel or a steampunk novel that doesn't have those attributes. So you might but I care. I love my novel so much. I'm invested in the cover. I want the cover to accurately, I blame this, reflect what's going on. So I'm going to have a close-in of a Babbage computing machine on the cover, because that's what my novel is about.
Yeah.
Now,
Nobody will buy it.
It
No
doesn't
one will
match
buy
to
it.
anything. So you
Yeah.
want to speak to the genre
Yeah,
conventions.
so just to add on to that, so when I redid my cover, I used an old graphic design trick, which is steal. Steal where you can. And so what I did is I looked at the top 10 best-selling Western horrors, and I looked real hard at their covers, and I looked at the similarities, and I copied it.
I entirely endorse this.
And not only that, but in some genres out there, urban fantasy is one in particular. We sell a lot of urban fantasy books, and we should do more of this than we do. But the top best-selling authors in that genre all use the same cover designer. And I didn't know that until I bought a cover from that cover designer and was looking through their portfolio. And I was like, oh, yep, this and this and this and this, they're all going to the same people. So, and that if you're in the urban fantasy market, I will tell you, Deranged Doctor is the name of the designer. They're very reasonably priced. They're only about $300-ish, including print, which is not bad. But you will have to book them 6 to 12 months ahead of time because they're in demand that heavy. So that's the trade-off that you'll pay there. But almost all of the best-selling authors in that genre are using that cover designer. So if you go with that cover designer, you will have a cover that looks like it belongs with that crew of the best-selling and authors. And the ones that you care about are the best-selling authors in your genre. You don't care about the guy who sells one book every 3 months in your genre and what his cover looks like.
No.
You care about the guy who's number 1, number 2, number 3. You want people to think that your book is like theirs. If and only if your book is actually like theirs, because otherwise you're going to break that promise,
Right.
you're going to get the bad review, and not sell more.
One final small thought on covers is, in general, I think that buying a book from an established cover designer is the way to go. But there is another approach that you can use, and that's both for fiction and nonfiction, and that's to use a photograph with good logo type or font design over this. And I've done this 4 times. My 2 homesteading books have used pictures from my farm, of my sheep, and of a certain birch tree on there. And I lucked out because my wife is a graphic designer, so she's done the logo types for it. But it also does work on fiction things. I've got 2 short stories. One is The Team, and one is Staking a Claim. And there's a huge amount of freely available licensed for commercial reuse photographs out there, and so I used a NASA archive image for one, and just something off of some website. For another.
But you need good typography.
Absolutely.
You absolutely do.
You know, for the love of God, do not use 3 fonts or 4 fonts.
Get a,
Don't have neon green text.
Right.
Don't
Unless
use
maybe
Comic
it's a zombie
Sans.
movie.
If you don't know what good typography is, pay somebody who does. If you are trying to do it yourself, keep it very simple. And the vast majority of covers you in your genre probably use the same 3 or 4 fonts. So if you're doing it yourself, find out what those are. But don't do it yourself.
I actually
Pay a pro.
design. I do a lot of the design of my covers myself, but I have someone else do the typography. For most
Yeah,
of the time.
typography is
It's
an
a
art.
special-
It's
It's
an
a
art.
special art.
So we're getting kind of close to time, and I did want to take some questions. So the one last thing I would ask, and this is the real painful question, is I'm assuming that there is a amount of money you have to invest into advertising for it to be worthwhile. We've heard like 30, 40 bucks. I'm not thinking that's it. So what is a reasonable budget to actually get real results?
I'm not going to talk about budget. I'm going to talk about impressions, clicks, and sales.
Nice.
Because those are the real answers, and how much that costs you is going to depend a lot on the keywords and the genre that you're in. I wish I could give you a better answer. I will give a dollar amount at the end, but it's also a wild-ass guess. Your data is absolutely no good on any keyword until you have the honest truth. Your data is not good and reliable until you have at least 1 or 200 clicks. Now, I've turned off ads way before they get to that point. But I have also have ads that I have not turned off until they've gotten to that point. The problem is your statistics are just terrible. They're trash. We got a lot of software engineers in the room, so basic statistics. If you only have a dozen or 2 dozen clicks, your statistics are just nothing. Now, what I will
And your brain wants to impute a pattern.
You
to
want to
it.
impute a
So you
pattern
go,
on it,
"Oh,
but you've
this
got
one has
nothing."
gotten 2 clicks, and that's like 20% of the total. And so if I put all my money into this, and it's like it's nothing, it's noise. There's no data.
Your data's just not very good until you get to that point. With Facebook ads, if you're on Facebook, I would absolutely tell you do nothing with your ad at all until you've hit 500 clicks. I would just not change a thing. With Amazon, I would like to tell you that as well, because I think the statistics are still about the same. The problem is that most of your keywords on Amazon are going to take you months or years to get to 50 or 100 clicks. the vast majority of your keywords are just going to take a long time to get any data on. So my general rule of thumb is that your campaign, you're probably not going to start getting good data till you've put $300 to $500 in it. And even then, your data is going to be iffy. I've spent probably, in the last 6 years, I've spent probably $55,000 on Facebook ads between my dojo and my books. I've made most of that back. And I've probably made it all back in follow-on sales. And you're just not going to get your money back. And you're not going to have good data till you've got 500 clicks on Facebook. Just don't even do anything until you hit that point. On Amazon, I will turn ads off when I start to get to the point where I would have had to get 2 or 3 book sales to break even on that ad, and it hasn't. Or I will turn a keyword off when it hits that point. If I get to the point where I've got to get 3, 4, 5 books selling to make that money back, the odds are very low that ad is ever going to pay off. So I'll turn them off early. If I hit the point where I've, gone beyond where one book would make it back, I'll turn it off quickly. But if it looks like it's profitable, it still may not be until you've got a few hundred clicks on it. You just don't have good data. And here's the other stat that I'll throw out there, which is that in general, for a decent ad, you're looking at probably a 5 to 10%, maybe 20% if you're really good conversion rate, meaning that in a 5% conversion rate, 1 out of every 20 clicks is going to give you a sale. 10%, 20% would mean 20% would mean 1 out of every 5 clicks. I've had a very few keywords that do that, and the ones that do that well, unfortunately, don't get a lot of impressions for me. I wish they did, because I have a few that do that well, and they don't sell very many books. But I make good money on them.
To dig into the math of this a little bit, if I presented to you a coin that landed on heads 55% of the time and told you that you could bet as much money as you wanted on this day after day after day, this is a guaranteed money winner for you. You would, try to borrow $20 million from somebody and just bet $1 million a day on it. And once you had that, you could build up your bank and just keep betting, and this is a guaranteed money machine. But a 55% heads coin looks a heck of a lot like a 50% heads coin. And if I flip a coin 3 times, 4 times, 8 times in a row, you can't tell the difference between these two coins. And you've all heard in science about the replication crisis. The replication crisis is exaggerating effects that are very small and conjuring them into existence when they don't really exist. Now, we're positing that these effects do really exist, that some ads have a 43% return on money and some have a 55% return on the money. So my way of explaining the exact same thing that was just said is, you're looking for the 55% coins, and you've got a bag. It has 45% coins, 55, 61, 13% coins. You can identify the 13% coins pretty quickly.
Yes.
Tail, 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 head, tail, tail, tail. Throw that coin out. But it takes work.
Well, and here's an example of why I was saying 500, right? If it's a 55% coin, you will probably see that pattern after 100 flips, but you may not.
Right. I mean, think about that. After 100 flips, one of them has around 50 plus or minus, and one has around 55 plus or minus. Even after 100 flips, they look almost identical.
They look very close, and you can't really be sure if it's actually 55% or if it's 45%.
With a good luck streak.
That had a good luck streak, exactly. And you get to about 500 or so, and then you can. I would really like to stick to numbers where I could say, I don't trust my numbers till I have 500 sales from an ad. But any given keyword on Amazon will take you so long to get 500 sales
you'll
that you can't do that. And that's my other piece of advice is keep your bids low until you start to get data on them. Keep your bids low so that you're spending less, except for the fact that I will tell you that your results will change as you change the bids. I can absolutely tell you that changes.
So if you have a keyword that's performing really well, will you up the bid?
Yes, but slowly.
And here's an example of why why you need to do it slowly and why your results might change as you up your bid. If I bid 5 cents for a keyword, and everybody else in that category is bidding $1, when is my ad going to get shown? When everybody else runs out of budget, or when Amazon itself thinks that my book is a good fit for the book that's up there. Okay? Because that plays into it. If Amazon itself thinks that my book is a good match, because Amazon wants to sell the book, right? That's their primary goal, is
They'll
to
make
sell a
more
book.
profit selling a book than just selling the ad. So they'd love to do both.
What they really want is to do both, but they want to sell a book. So they're going to put up the ads that are more likely to sell a book. Okay? So if my ad gets put up there at 5 cents, then it could be because everybody else ran out of budget, or it could be because Amazon knows that that particular book is more likely to sell with my book when it goes up there. If it's the latter and I start raising my bid, what's going to happen? My book's going to start showing up on other books more often. And those may not be the ones that I sell with, but I have no way of knowing that because Amazon doesn't tell you give you that much data about where your ad showed up. So if I bump it to $1, now I start showing up on every book that shows up for this keyword, and my stats are going to go down because those books aren't a good fit. How do you know that? You don't. So what do? You increase your bids slowly as you start getting results so that you can see, okay, at this point I don't get good results anymore. I want to keep it at this point.
So a follow-up to that, I'm assuming you don't follow Amazon's recommended bid for a given keyword.
Absolutely not. That is a great question, and I'm glad you asked it. Absolutely not. Why does Amazon have a recommended bid? They want to maximize Amazon's profits, okay? This goes back to what Travis was saying. They want you to give them as much of your money from your book as you can. They don't want to give you 70%. They want to keep their money. Start your bids low. Always start your bids low.
Like literally like 5 cents?
Not anymore, because I find I can't get impressions at 5 cents anymore. I find that for the most part I can't get impressions below 10 or 15 cents these days. Unless you're just really willing to wait it out. And if you go that low at 5 cents, you've just really got to wait it out, and it may be 3-6 months before you have data. Right. Which, if you have $30-$40 and that's all you've got to spend on Amazon ads, go low on your keywords and wait it out. You're going to trade time for money. So I have done things in the past where I've traded money for time, and I've said I want data on this keyword, so I'm going to pay more.
This gets back to poker, where you're buying information.
I'm buying information because I want to know, does this keyword give me any results at all? So my general approach is to basically find out, do these keywords sell at all? And if they sell at all, then I'm going to start poking at it to figure out if your keyword sells at all, then in theory there's a bid rate that will break even on that keyword for you. Now it's just a matter of finding out what it is. Okay? So for me, I have a little bit more money to spend. I see you.
Yep.
I like to spend the money to get some data first, find out what actually sells, and then dial it way back and start figuring out what's my break-even point for these keywords, which, again, will still take time. But if you don't have the money to spend, you want to go the other way. You want to put your bids really low and use your time instead. If you don't have money, you have time, and use it.
Yeah.
I don't recommend that if you've only got one book, for sure. I've spent more than that in a month, notably more than that. But no, if you are, in the case where I'm using it, which I think Travis said, I'm assuming is if your test budget is $30, right? Which I hate to tell you this, but $30 is your test budget. Total. You know, I hate to tell you this, but $30, $40 total budget ain't going to tell you a whole lot.
So what would you recommend as a minimum budget to learn something? $200?
If you really want to learn and get to a point where you know much of anything, I'd recommend $300 to $500.
Okay.
I hate to tell you that. I really do, because I hate to spend it myself. And the thing is that even then, you're going to wish you had more data. Sorry, I didn't mean to
No,
take
no,
over
we're
the
open question now. So
Assume Amazon's not ever giving you any way to contact the people who bought it.
No.
So have you set up situations where you basically can find a way of capturing email or information for the, offering short stories to go along with books?
You won't like my answer.
Which is
My answer is that we are not in Kindle Unlimited. We have chosen to not go the Amazon exclusive route. We run our own website, and we sell through our own website. And my experience is that sales on non-Kindle platforms are total shit, and it's hard. Now, I know other people have had really good experiences with that, but with us, it's been very hard. But I have done it explicitly so that we can sell directly and capture that information, because Amazon will not give it to you. So that's the primary reason we run our own website, is for that exact thing, because we can contact that. If you have bought a book from us in the past, then I know who you are, and I can tell you that our next book came out, and I can make sure that you get that information. Amazon may or may not let them know that you've put out a new book when you put out a new book. Even there, we don't make a ton of sales off our website. Their primary source is still Amazon, and we lose revenue on Amazon because we're not going Kindle Unlimited. I am very firmly convinced that in the long run, having data of who bought our books will pay off, but we're going to have to probably take more time to collect that data before it does. And that's my answer. These guys might have different answers.
yeah, do you want to answer that question, or we have
Do we have anything else to
a
add?
couple questions popping up?
I'm a special case because I was an Amazon published author for a few years,
and that's
so,
distinct from just uploading the Kindle.
right. I was not just self-published. I was actually I was self-published first, and then I got picked up by the Amazon publishing wing, and so they spent a lot of money promoting my books, and I have a contract with them so they have the rights to several of my books. So that's how a lot of readers found me initially. So I'm kind of locked into Amazon because it would be sort of suicidal for me to not be in.
You've got to
Kindle
figure out what
Unlimited.
works for you.
So I would love to eventually get to something, even if I could just make a living outside of Amazon, because I hate being dependent on them the more and more, like every day. I want to get to there, but at this point, there's just no way I can.
Let me speak to being dependent on Amazon. I'm in a little bit of a pickle right now, where I mentioned that being on Tim Pool helped me a lot. And sort of just before Tim Pool, I had put my Amazon prices really low so that I could buy my own books at minimum list price and ship them out to fulfill my Kickstarter. And this is for the homesteading books, Escape the City. And
This
then
is for the hardcovers, right?
right, the
Because
hardcovers specifically,
because you
Now,
can't.
you
They
couldn't.
won't
Now they
let
do.
you order author copies
Right,
of your own
right.
hardcovers.
So for a
because-
few months, when they rolled out hardcovers, they wouldn't let authors buy their own books at list price or at printing price. They forced you to buy at retail price. So what I did is I lowered my price from retail, which is $50, down to the absolute minimum, which was $21, and then I wrote some scripts that churned through a big CSV file of Kickstarter backers and manipulated the browser, sort of a Ghost in the Shell, fingers going, to send out thousands of books. And then I moved the price back up. Amazon had a bug in their system, and they also had a bug. They had a bug in their code, and they had a bug in their procedures, where the KDP contract says you may change the list price at any time using our web interface, and it will take effect in no more than 5 days. But the support people didn't know this, and apparently my change got routed to someone who was on vacation, and his email got lost, and he never adjusted the price. So the price stayed low for 3 weeks. And during this period, I sold $20,000 or $30,000 of books at 0% royalty on each book. So I'm now in the position where I assert that Amazon, by the terms of their contract, owes me about $12,500. Amazon is fighting this. I am in the position where I am literally about to sue them. And Amazon can absolutely, under the Kindle contract, say, for reasons that we're not going to disclose, you no longer have access to the KDP platform, which would knock out 100% of my publishing and authoring career. I'm going to do this because I like to fight. But I might be effing myself. So this is a great reason to not be 100% dependent on any one platform.
We've made the short-term decision to give up revenue in the... I have the belief that it will pay off in the long run, but that's not necessary. We might be wrong, you know. One other comment that I will make is that for those who do Kickstarter is another way you can get the data for who has bought your books and your products,
Yeah.
because they do give you that so that you can fulfill your
I'm a big fan of Kickstarter.
thing. It's it can be very beneficial for that. So I definitely encourage as much as you possibly can to collect that data. Unfortunately, you have to get a fair amount of it before it pays off, but it is worth doing. I think you had a question.
We had a question here first.
I wanted to echo something that Travis said about the history of advertising. The classic book, the subject is Scientific Advertising by Claude Hopkins.
Nice.
Published in 1923. You get it for 99 cents on Kindle.
Awesome.
It's well worth every penny
Yeah,
of that.
and listen to that date, 1923. This wasn't a new
No.
science a century ago. This was already pretty well debugged a century
It's
ago.
all the stuff that Travis was talking about in terms of doing A/B testing in the context of direct mailing and writing different headlines and ad copy and a whole lot more, and it's well worth reading.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, we have time for 2 more questions.
Okay, so to go back to the subject of cover art, one of my primary goals in marketing when I get to that stage is I want to make it very, very clear to the reader what kind of experience that they're going to have, so that they know in advance what that looks like. And I'm not an artist, so I have no idea how to select this. How do I go about finding someone who's experienced cover art and can look at the book and say, okay, this is the kind of cover art you want to have?
Let's talk later.
I'll give a few answers in general for that, though, and nothing against Ryan if he's willing to help you take it.
I'm just.
Your cover artist isn't going to read your book. They don't have time for it. Think about it for a minute. If they're turning out covers at $100 or $200 a pop, how many do you have to turn out to make a living in a month? They don't have time to read your book. At the same time, though, I've had very good experience. It has taken a bit, and you have some hit and miss. I've had good experience with finding a few cover artists who can take some. I like the kind where I can just give them a few general guidelines of what's going on in the book and let them go and make a cover. Your book does not have to be, and probably should not be, your cover should not be a scene from your book, right? That's the number one mistake most authors make, is they want it to match perfectly. I get authors who complain at me because the hair color on a character doesn't match. Your readers do not fucking care.
Nope.
Pardon my language.
No.
They don't care. You will find a few who do, okay? You will have that one Spurg reader who's come in. You want that reader, okay?
If you really care, I'll Photoshop the hair color.
If they care enough to get upset about the hair color, it means you've won a fan.
Yeah.
Okay? You're be happy with that.
Yeah.
It means they read your book. Okay? It means your cover worked.
Yeah.
All right? You want a cover that looks like the overall experience of your book. You're promising them an experience. Okay? And
this gets back to genres and subgenres.
very, very much back to genres. Micro genre.
Yeah,
Very,
right.
very tiny
A
targeted.
micro genre is a contract. We all know what a steampunk novel is. And it's not just set in Victorian England. It has a certain tone, certain technology, certain plot elements. So now, if you are writing a book that's a little bit sui generis and doesn't well match, then you've got a tricky problem.
Yep.
But if you can say, oh, this is a gothic romance, or
Yeah.
this is an existential horror, or this is a zombie, whatever, your problem's 95%
So,
solved.
and another tip about finding designers, just like the advice about finding agents, the best way to find an agent is to find the authors that you love and read their acknowledgments and see who their agent is. Graphic designers are always credited on the books. The book design is always credited. It's right there on the copyright page. So if there's a book that really matches the spirit of your book and you really dig the cover, check out who the designer is. Track them down. I mean, graphic designers aren't gods. They're just
Email
people. Yeah.
I've done it.
Yeah.
I've done it more than once, and they will always get back to you. I've ended up a couple times not using them because their price was outside of my budget, and sometimes I have used them when I've done it. But absolutely, if there's a book, if there's a genre that you're targeting and a book that you think is really like yours, pick it up and find out who the cover artist is. Talk to other authors who, if there's an author, or if there's books that you've seen that are like yours, talk to the authors. Most of the time the authors will be happy to tell you who they used for cover artists.
Yep.
I will make a couple of warnings, though. I'm going to pitch Ryan here, even though I don't know him very well. Most artists are. I've had so much experience with flaky artists.
Yes.
If you
Yes.
find one who's reliable, who can do 90% of the job, but he's reliable, stick with him. I promise you, because I've had so much experience with flaky artists, especially this last year since COVID hit, which you would think would be when they'd want the money and be working harder, but we've had more than usual.
It's hard, and it's especially hard with. I mean, if you're talking about covers between $100 to $300, the problem you're going to run into, unless the person, and I'm honestly, I'm not trying to shill myself, okay, but unless the person is passionate like I am about just not letting writers have crappy covers, because that's really my crusade. I just don't have crappy covers, please. The problem is that a cover that ranges from $100 to $300, that is not big money in graphic design.
Yeah.
That's not big money in art. That's chicken scratch.
And when I spent $100 on a cover, it was for a short story, or I sort of thought maybe I'll get lucky and I'll earn the cover back.
Yeah.
I just wanted something acceptable so as not to pollute my
Yeah,
brand.
and then the problem with the flaky artists is that what will happen is you will commission the artist for your $200-300 cover, and then they'll get a commission for $1,000 piece of work, and guess where their attention is going to go?
Yep.
I mean, that's how it goes.
One additional point on your cover doesn't have to be a scene from your novel. When I wrote my first two novels, I came across on some existing websites some artists who had done a scene that accidentally captured a scene from my novel. It was a wrecked ocean freighter sitting on the moon for sort of no explanation. And that's a scene from the book. So he was a Russian artist. I reached out to him and I licensed it for $100. And it was on the original cover of my novels that I sold in the Kickstarter, 4 years ago or 5 years ago. And then later, when my novels were picked up by Podium Publishing, the audiobook publisher, they commissioned a real artist. And, these are presumably $1,000, $1,300 covers, and they're somewhat generic. And yet, they captured the genre. They didn't capture the story, but they captured the genre. And I reached out to a bunch of friends, and Podium gave me permission to use this cover on my books to unify the brand across the two things. And I asked a couple dozen friends, which is better, and I'll tell you, I like the one that actually captures the scene. And most of them said, for me, a Spurg who's read the books, I like the one that you like. But it is my belief that the average reader will be drawn in by the other. And I switched the covers.
Don't waste your time asking your friends, or especially other authors, which cover is the better cover. Just don't waste your time. They're all wrong. Okay.
This is probably right. I should have just trusted Podium Publishing.
Don't waste your time. I see so many authors going down that route. It's a total waste. You can put so when I did my book cover for my book, I actually did put a poll up on Twitter. And what most people who voted in that poll didn't realize is that I actually didn't care which cover won.
It's just controversy?
No, it wasn't controversy either. I was looking at two different colored versions of my cover, and I wanted to know which one did better with men, because that was my target audience. Was not female, it was male. And so all I was looking at, I was looking for, because my cover artist had an original version that was purple, and we liked purple better. But I thought that the green version that he did was going to do better with men, and the purple was going to do better with women. And the poll on Twitter proved me right.
Nice.
And so we changed the cover over. But otherwise, they don't know. Okay, what people like as art is not what will sell your book. And the only data that matters is what sells your book. Everything else is worthless. It's not data; it's noise.
And I'll also say that different things work in different places. It is typical that when a different publisher picks something up, they will often change the cover, and I would say defer to that process. When my novels were sold to Eskimo in Russia for translation, they put new covers on, and great, more power to them.
So we have time for one more question.
So I just went to Amazon.com and typed in military science fiction, and 4 out of 6 covers that popped up are soldiers on the ground and spaceships up above shooting shit. And I'm thinking to myself, well, on tour, would I be doing bad to just copy that?
No,
that
absolutely not.
That's the genre.
And you will probably find a dozen pre-mades on
Yep.
the pre-made sites for under $100 that have that formula.
And it's funny, that exact example is something that I meant
it's a
to argue
wonderful
earlier.
example.
That is the Mill SF cover.
In fact, I'll go the other way and tell you the inverse of that, which is that my original cover for my book had a helicopter and in the desert and a soldier hauling his comrade away from the wreckage of a helicopter. Everybody thought it was a military fiction book, which it's not. It's an action horror book that just happens to be about a guy who's a veteran. It's not really a military book. So that was why it was a terrible cover. It didn't fit the book at all. Even though it was a scene from the book, it didn't fit the book. Because of that exact thing. Everybody who looked at it thought it was military. Every single person. Everyone. 100%. So, yes, it's absolutely. It doesn't matter if the spaceship looks anything like the spaceship in your book.
I mean, it doesn't matter if there is a spaceship in your book.
It doesn't matter. No. If you're selling sci-fi, putting a spaceship on the cover is a great way to go.
So we got one last question.
It wasn't a question. I was just going to say, for everybody who's looking for pre-mates, there is a website that's called Book Cover Zone.
Book Cover Zone. Fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, they're not the best covers ever, but they range from $60 to $90 for the ebook cover, and they actually have a system on the website where you put your own title.
You don't even have to interact with a human.
Nice.
Wait for an artist. So
You put your own.
That's my jam.
You put your own info in, it re-renders it. You can change the title 20 times and re-render it. It's like $30 extra for the print version, so it's not that bad.
And it's not the best covers ever, but they have a good sense of genre. They
Nice.
have apocalyptic,
It's-
they have sci-fi, they have fantasy, they have all
It's
Awesome.
not the best, and yet we've picked up a couple covers from them for $90 that people have come back and said, "Man, I love that cover." And I'm like, "That's the cheapest one I ever bought." And I'm glad.
All right, so we've gone way over time, but if you have any closing statements, I'll just
Nope.
leave it up to the panel.
Data. Don't trust anything from anybody else but data.
Nice.
And data, the only data that matters is what's sold.
I don't really have anything to add other than just to stress again that if you have one book, I mean, this may be interesting to you, but don't bother with trying to advertise it. Just keep writing. You probably need to practice writing more, and you need to get more books out there. The other thing is, I wanted to mention, because I mentioned John De La Rose, I have nothing against John De La Rose. He's a good guy, as Travis was saying. And he's absolutely more than welcome to come to base. That's what I would tell people when they would say, "You should have John De La Rose, plug this thing." I just literally did not want this thing to get any bigger. I didn't want any more, popularity, any more publicity, because this was as much as I can handle, as you can see. So nothing against John. I hope he comes to a future-based.
I'm good friends with John De La Rose, actually, and I will tell you that Rob is completely right. If he'd been here, that's what it would have turned into. So
There would have been
I love the guy a lot.
I couldn't handle that. I mean, this place is at its limit. I'm at my limit. The
And
party is at its
we
limit.
applaud you for hosting.
Thank you.
We do.
Thank you.
It's been great.
A perfect wrap up.